Suddenly I realized how much I was reading lips just to understand what people were saying. And once half of their face was gone, I was losing whole conversations.
From NCPR and the Adirondack Center for Writing, this is the Howl Podcast. I'm Ethan Shanty. I've had ringing in my ears for as long as I can remember. My tinnitus is so bad that I find it really difficult to be in quiet rooms. I've usually got music playing or some noise in the background all of the time. If I don't go to bed with music or a podcast playing, then I can't get to sleep because all I can focus on is that high-pitched shrieking. I know for other people, tinnitus comes and goes or they can ignore it, but for me, it's always there. I just can't ignore it. I know that some of my tinnitus is genetic, but I definitely have made it worse by playing music and working in radio. And for the last few years, I'd kind of been in denial about how bad my hearing has gotten. But finally, I got sick of reading lips and watching TV with subtitles and asking people to repeat themselves over and over again. So I set up an appointment with an audiologist, and right away, I knew that my hearing was even worse than I thought. They ran the test on my left ear. You know the test. You hold your hand up when you hear the beeping sound, and that seemed pretty normal on my left ear, that is. But when they switched over to the right, I could barely hear anything at all. I had this sinking feeling in my stomach that my hearing was damaged just beyond repair. I stepped out of that isolation booth and they showed me a chart. One ear, decent enough. The other, you could see a steep decline in functionality. Before I could even ask what my options were, though, they put a hearing aid on my right ear and they said, "How does that feel?" You ever see those videos of kids putting glasses on for the first time and they get so excited when they can see their parents in focus? It was like that. For a decade, it was like I was listening to the world underwater, and suddenly I could hear again. And my tinnitus, I didn't even notice it at all. I almost broke down crying, like seriously. When I got home, though, that was the real difference. I was telling my girlfriend about the experience, and she stopped me mid-sentence, and she said, "Could you speak up? You're talking so quietly I can barely hear you at all." It was pretty strange to be on the receiving end of that. My hearing still isn't perfect, and I still do have to ask people to repeat themselves, but I can finally hear a lot of those parts of songs that I was missing before, and now I can even sit in a quiet room. It's kind of peaceful, believe it or not. Rivka Eckert is a Potsdam-based theater artist and teacher who I recently discovered is also very hard of hearing. I've known her for years, and I learned that the reason that she went deaf is because she got pregnant. So I had to know that full story. I brought her into the NCPR studios to tell me all about it.
When I first found out that I was pregnant, I expected that my life was going to change, but I obviously, like many first time parents, had no idea how much my life was going to change. I was pregnant in graduate school, and after my son was born, in those early days of my mothering, I was experiencing a whole torrent of different emotional and physical sensations that I'd never had before. Like my son had his days and his nights flipped, so I hardly slept at all. And it felt like this just constant chain of laundry and feeding and changing diapers. Um, and I knew that I was tired and dizzy and that I would have ringing in my ears and have a hard time falling asleep. But I didn't know that those physical experiences were not normal postpartum experiences. They're not something that the doctor asks you about during your 6-week postpartum checkup. So I just sort of assumed that it was because of the loss of sleep. I really didn't notice how much my inner ear and hearing had shifted until the pandemic hit and everyone put masks on. And suddenly I realized how much I was reading lips just to understand what people were saying. And once half of their face was gone, um, I was losing whole conversations. Around about this time, I was also experiencing some vertigo. Like I would stand up and like lose my horizon line and, get really dizzy. There was this ringing that was happening, sometimes buzzing, sometimes it sounded like bells. And I couldn't sleep because it was so loud. It was was maddening. So all of this coupled with, being a first-time parent, I knew it was time to see my doctor. So I went to see my doctor and explained to her what was going on with my hearing, and she sent me out to a specialist. And lo and behold, I had notable hearing loss. And after some more tests, the doctors diagnosed me with otosclerosis. So otosclerosis is a hardening of a particular bone inside the middle ear, and it happens because of often an influx of estrogen. So it's common for women in their late 20s to early 40s to experience otosclerosis, because that's when a lot of women become pregnant. And so that inflammation that was caused in my middle ear led to me losing sound. And then because I had lost the sound, my brain was working so hard to pick up meaning that it filled in all of the ringing and humming, to try and create some sort of sounds. So there were two options. I could get hearing aids, or I could have surgery. By the time I got this diagnosis, I was pregnant with my second child, and so surgery wasn't really an option. And the way that surgery happens, they don't do surgery on both ears at the same time. So they would do one and then 6 weeks of pretty intense recovery, and then the other one. And so I knew, given again how intense early mothering was, that I wasn't going to be able to have surgery for quite some time. So hearing aids it was. And I remember the first time I put these hearing aids in, um, like it absolutely freaked me out how the world sounded after not being able to hear it. Like just hearing paper crumple, um, it was almost like deafening. Hearing birds that I didn't realize were there, like staplers, really intense if you have hearing aids. Um, so the world was suddenly very noisy, and with two kids, the world is already very noisy. But what having hearing aids gave me was the ability to hear people talking, and that is really a gift, because we live in a world that's built for hearing people, and to lose conversations meant I was on the outside of so much connection. So I put my hearing aids on in the morning, usually about the time that I have my coffee, because it's like my brain wake up time. And so most of my family knows not to talk to me or ask me questions before hearing aids go in or I get my coffee. But the other morning, my son came into bed and he was saying something to me, and I sort of gestured like, I don't have my hearing aids in. And he kinda, like, threw his hands up and crawled into bed with me, and, we just lay there for a while, like, cuddling and looking out the window, and it was so sweet. And I realized, that even though having children might have taken my hearing from me, it gave me this kind of love that needs no words at all.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Howl Podcast. Thanks so much to Rivka for her story. And next week, we'll hear from Barb Heller and we'll swap tour stories together.
The test pressing had slumped down one side of the briefcase and up the other side like a taco shell that was a little bit uneven.
The Howl Podcast is a co-production of NCPR and the Adirondack Center for Writing in Saranac Lake. Our theme music is by famous letter writer of Plattsburgh. David Summerstein is our script supervisor. Bill Hanel is our director of digital services. Anna Williams-Bergen is our digital project specialist, and I'm Ethan Shanty. I write, produce, host, and edit the podcast. You can learn more about The Howl when you visit ncpr.org/howl. If you're so inclined, you can make a financial contribution there as well. And if you want to pitch me your story for a chance to appear on an upcoming episode of the podcast, email me, Ethan, at ncpr.org. Till next week, I'm Ethan Shanty. This is The Howl Podcast.